This is Carla Delaney on BizBuzz this afternoon, and I got a really interesting subject for you. All of you thinking of what shall I do with my money? What should I be investing in? All that sort of thing. Well, you should be tuning in to BizBuzz this afternoon because what we're talking about is gold. And I got the idea to do this conversation this afternoon because I met a very interesting networker, Bill. Bill Wilmot met me at a networking event, and he stopped everybody in their tracks when he said, I think he said, I'm in bullion. I think that's what he said, something like that. So I'm going to introduce Bill, and he's brought his colleague with him, Prem, and he's an expert in gold. So I'm going to now talk to Bill, and he'll tell us his background and how he knows Prem.
Thanks, Carla. I just want to say, actually, I want to great thanks to you for inviting myself and Prem here today. We're really thankful for that. So, my background, I think, is a good place to start. I'm from a traditional financial services background. So, being a Berkshire lad, I joined the Prudential in Reading on the 10th of August 1980, a long, long time ago. Now, we're going to come on to these things later on in our chat, but technology's moved a long way over that time. The internet, the way business is done, and the opportunities it gives us. But I suppose I've come from a corporate background, a regulatory-driven environment where we have to be careful about compliance and things like this, and how we actually help people plan for their future. Now, I suppose I've gone through the difficulty of redundancy, and I realised at that point really that it's not enough just to have a job. We sometimes become ill, loved ones need our help, and we have financial problems in the markets which create difficulty for a lot of people. It hurts. And having been through that situation myself, I realised I have to look at other ways of producing income. So basically, I've had my own business. I went into a state agency just before the last financial crash, which was a bit of a wrong decision. But I've become more aware, and what I've realised is I had to find different ways of obviously producing that income. So through my sort of awareness through networking and meeting people through the business meetings I had with Carla, I become more aware of new ways in which to generate income. And that's really how I led to obviously meet Prem here, because from my pensions background I realise that people are living longer, they're spending more time in retirement, and when we look at our governments, they're not really equipped to keep on doing that. As the population grows older and lives longer, it's going to become more difficult to sustain that. So that's why I started to look at alternative methods, and that's how I came to meet Prem.
So hence the 1 second, oh no, well, not 1 second, it was a 5 second or something, little introduction that you did, and everybody went, wow, gold.
Yes, and I had never considered gold before. And we're also going to touch on Bitcoin, which some of your readers or listeners might have heard about.
I've heard of Bitcoin, but I haven't a clue, I have to say, what it is. We are going to be joined shortly by Mike Agate, and he does know what Bitcoins are. I presume he knows bits about gold. I mean, I know about bracelets, I know about necklaces. That's as much as I know really about gold. What really surprises me, Prem, and Prem's going to tell us his background in a minute, Prem Joel, and is that our country seem to have sold all their gold as far as I'm aware. Do we actually have any? Do you know?
Well, good question, Carla. Thanks for having me here, first of all. Hello, everybody at Marlow. Prem Johal is my name. I'm actually an economist by education and a private wealth manager by training. I've spent 15 years in the City of London advising nothing less than multimillionaires on how to invest your money. And when the last crisis happened, I hit a bit of a roadblock. My employer changed name overnight. I kept the job, but suddenly I was employed by a totally different company. And that started my journey to dig deeper and revisit everything I had learned. And some of it needed unlearning, unfortunately. So I've actually professionally covered pretty much all the asset classes there are. So I've been licensed and registered both in the UK and in the US on the NASD Series 7 representative, which simply means that I could deal in bonds and equities and mutual funds and all kinds of fancy instruments, including some of those instruments that caused the financial crash. So I was actually across the fence on the other side, on the inside, when the last financial crisis happened. Now, a crisis is a crisis. It is not your making, nor was it my making. But every problem must, by default, come with a solution. So I started looking around for the solutions, and the deeper I dug, the more gold I struck, literally speaking. Now, to answer Carla's question really quickly, the UK government actually owns very little gold. It sold off everything. Under Gordon Brown was the largest chunk that was sold, and the UK holds the gold on behalf of various other, the Bank of England does anyway, on behalf of various other banks and central banks, but the UK themselves actually don't own much, and it is very, very sad indeed, because the mighty pound was the strongest in 1913 when it was 100% backed by gold. But most people don't even realize that it was not only delinked from the backing of gold, but eventually we got to play with pieces of paper known as banknotes, backed by absolutely nothing other than a promise by the governor of the Bank of England. And it simply says, I promise to pay the bearer the sum of such and such, backed by absolutely nothing other than thin air and promises. And it's not my personal opinion. I would encourage you strongly to do your own research, dig around a little bit, because ultimately, we can talk about all the kind of things happening in current affairs, the revival of the fox hunting and all kinds of things that the public can easily get distracted with. But ultimately, your whole year's hard work, your effort, your labor is expressed through what you've made in income and how that has sustained your lifestyle. And you cannot separate yourself from the concept or the notion of money itself, what money is. And I do believe that the UK, we are actually quite financially literate compared to many, many other countries. But in short, when it comes to understanding what money really is, it is shocking how very few people actually are aware that paper isn't money. It's simply a currency. The only money there is actually gold and silver, and has been for the last 5,000 years of recorded history. So this is one of the reasons why I am in this business anyway. But it's not just about getting people to buy more gold or silver. It's actually educating people also on understanding that there are ways of accumulating a property portfolio without ever having to deal with a property loan.
Well, I've learnt a lot. I knew I would, and that's excellent. So it wasn't such a stupid question after all. Well, it's Carla Delaney on BizBuzz this afternoon, and I've got Bill Wilmot and Prem Johal, and they are very knowledgeable people about what to do with our finances. And as Prem explained just before that piece of music, he's been in the deep end in more ways than one, and he's extremely knowledgeable. So, Prem, if I had a piece of I wanted to get into this. What should I be thinking of? Some people say I should be investing my money in painting. Some people say I should be investing it in shares. What do you do? How do you deal with people who just don't know what to do?
Sure. It's actually not that difficult. For a start, people need to know this, that when you buy gold, you're not really investing. All you're doing is flipping a paper currency into its metal equivalent. And because it is a metal, it is not covered by any of the financial regulatory regimes, to be honest. It's not a security. It is not a securitized asset, meaning it is not a piece of paper like a share or something expressed as a IOU type of a thing. It is really physical gold that we deal in. It's not just gold, we also deal in silver. And it's very simple. Most people have the exact same question that you just posed. How do I go about it? And so to break it down, it's very simple. First of all, you need to understand, am I getting a good price So you need to know what to look at compared to the market out there, whether or not you're paying too much of a spread, which is the margin every company usually keeps on, as a profit to themselves. The second thing to look at is, well, am I buying the actual grams or am I buying a finished product? And if it is a finished product, then you have to ask, well, should it be a bar or should it be a coin? If it is a coin, what is printed on it? So, it can get complicated, but we try and keep it very, very simple. What we do is we offer people the ability to acquire gold by the gram or even fraction of a gram as a regular savings account. So you set up a automatic monthly debit facility and you acquire either gold or silver or both by the gram, little by little, in whatever quantity you wish to set aside. And once you have a number of grams, at that point you can choose, okay, so which bar do I convert these grams into? In fact, if you didn't want to convert them into a bar and at that point decided this has built up a nice little nest egg, I want to go and add a conservatory or something and I'd rather spend the money there, you can simply sell it. Most people don't realize that in English common law, gold and silver both are physical property at par with land. It's literally real estate.
So it goes back many, many years, doesn't it, this whole thing?
Absolutely. It goes back all the way back to the Crusades when the whole idea of a trust structure comes about. And I don't know if you remember the story. Every movie with Robin Hood always starts with Robin Hood stealing what exactly? Gold from the sheriff to pay back whom? The people. So, gold has been an intrinsic part of our, not just in Britain, but across the world. Every major culture, every major organized culture has had gold as an intrinsic part of its dealings as actual money.
Now, as occasionally we find somebody finds a hoard. They go out with their little clever machines and they find a hoard that's been buried. So clearly at some point people thought that was the ideal way to protect their valuables. And then I imagine somebody, I don't know who, maybe you know, who came up with the idea of banks. So if I got this big chunk of gold, how do I protect it? Does it physically come to my doorstep?
Absolutely. That's the only real way to take gold ownership, is to actually physically hold it in your own hand, and then you become responsible for looking after it just like any other property. It is your property after all. It doesn't belong to somebody else. We do offer a storage facility in Switzerland and also in Dubai if necessary. But that is if you didn't want to bring it into the country. But you see, the beauty is gold is VAT-free to buy, it's tax-free to import, and the only taxes payable eventually, if you sold it, any capital gains tax becomes then payable. But other than that, it's the most tax-efficient way of accumulating wealth and actually preparing an inheritance for the next generation. And like you mentioned, the hoard of treasure, some people used to think like that. Well, they still do. All of the Chinese central banking system is heavily getting rid of their dollars in favor of gold. The Indians are buying gold, the Russians and the Arabs. So that takes care of about half the world's population that needs to replace the relatively worthless pieces of paper called dollars, euros and pounds. Why? Because in the last 8 years, so much has been printed to bail out the banks that there's just too much paper floating about, and they're worried that this thing is not going to hold its intrinsic value, but gold always has. So if central banks hold gold as an anchor, as something stable to protect the bank itself against various other foreign currencies, why is it that the average household isn't duplicating simply what the banks have been doing all along?
Maybe they're worried about thieves, because we're perhaps, not that protected, are we?
Correct. Okay, so 100-gram bar of gold, let's say, would be heavier than a mobile phone but smaller in size. It'll be smaller than a credit card, and it would fit in just about any nook and cranny you can find if you wanted to conceal it from a burglar.
So I'm not thinking like these great big bars of gold that you see in the films. I should be so lucky.
Well, a really big bar, like a big brick, is known as the good delivery bar. It's usually 12.4 kilograms and worth over $500,000.
Not bad if you can get it. Have you actually seen such a thing?
I've held a few, yes.
Have you now? Bill, have you seen these sort of things?
No. Quite jealous, actually.
Yes. So obviously, coming from a completely different background, has this all been news to you when you first met Prem then?
Yes, absolutely. I touched on my background at the beginning, but I'm thinking ahead, really, of my pension and what I can do to support that. But, Prem's on a different level with regards to me, to his background. He's a great educator and he's willing to help people. He's a smashing chap all round, really. So, for me, it's the value we offer is great in the education, the wealth awareness, the idea of putting plans aside for the future. And we're not really good at doing that. And I do agree with Prem about this country. We are financially literate. I've learnt so much in the last year that I haven't really learnt in the last 30 or 40 years. And I think that's a measure of where we are, really.
So your business is about educating people then, is it, Prem? Educating them into what could be,
Well, that is a part of it. But if I was to give you my 30-second elevator pitch, as it's called,
yes,
it would be very simply this. We access...
Better than a 1 second.
Okay. Well, let's have a go. Let's see how it sounds, right? We offer 10, 20 times more return than your average bank deposit. And with that return, you're able to accumulate gold and silver at your own pace. And we generate that return using cutting-edge technology of Bitcoin. So what we do is we access a digital, brand new phenomenon in the world that is very, very highly rewarding right now. But in case people are nervous or skeptical about it, well, you don't have to hold it. Just access the production of it, which gives you fantastic returns, many, many times over your bank deposit would anyway. And then you take those returns and flip it into physical gold. So now you've got a machine generating digital money for you, which you convert into physical metal and bring it home. We offer the only two alternatives known to man to paper money, and that is digital plus metal, both under the same system. And this is where we come in. This is a completely brand new concept, and we're the only company in the world right now offering it in this way.
Well, that's taken the wind out of my sails, isn't it? Sort of like digital money takes me into a whole new realm, which obviously we will have a conversation with when Mike A gets here, because I think we'll put him on the spot. Bill, when you were with Prudential and Aon Consulting, how would you have taken this sort of thing, sitting on the other side of the fence?
Well, when I look back on those times, I think there's a corporate structure. I guess we're all quite insular when we're working away in that sort of structure, and you don't always appear to be outward looking. So I would have come to this with very sceptical eyes, and my ears would have been, listening carefully. But end of the day, it's a new market, and if you Google it and do your own research, you'll find that there's plenty of people already doing very well indeed out of Bitcoin. It's an exciting phenomenon, and it is really building a lot of interest in industry. If you look at millionaires like Bill Gates, he's taken an interest. Richard Branson is. There's startups all the time coming into the arena looking to use the leverage of Bitcoin. And that's what all we're doing here. We're using the leverage that Bitcoin gives us to allow us to acquire gold. So it pays for itself. And, there's many people predicting where Bitcoin might go. I don't do that. All I'd say is, look, we've got gold, we've got silver, we've got Bitcoin. There's 3 ways to spread our risk, because no one knows what the future holds. We have seen banks fail before. We have seen a financial crisis before. We will see them again. And it's my way of preparing for the future.
Well, I think it is on that point. I think we've been joined by Mike Agate. He'll be settling himself into his chair, so we will put him on the spot as far as bitcoins shortly. But my guess is that bitcoins are at the stage that shopping on the internet was about 10 years before it suddenly became really, really popular and everybody's doing it. There's a lot of speculation about how successful it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's been a few phrases coined to describe Bitcoin. One of it is bigger than the internet. It's a very similar situation that was groundbreaking. It's probably got more potential than Bitcoin, the internet itself, because Bitcoin is pretty much the internet, the way it's actually rolled out. But fundamentally, you're seeing now ways that we can actually use Bitcoin to buy goods and services online now. I mean, Microsoft take it. Expedia take it, and more is going on all the time. There's many people doing it, and what people don't realise is that you can now get a debit card attached to Bitcoin, which allows you to withdraw pound notes from the ATM, and you can use it at Visa displayed stores. So it's just like going shopping as you would do normally.
So it's in some cases it's replacing the card and various other.
It's
options.
the future of money.
Right. Well,
Basically.
We'll find out if it is the future. I think with gold generally you get the value.
You get a bit more, but.
Right. So, and this is Carla Delaney on BizBuzz, and we're talking about all kinds of what I call unusual things. Maybe you know what a Bitcoin is. Until this afternoon's conversation, I had heard of it, but I wasn't actually sure what it was. And for those that don't know what Bitcoins are, it's a form of digital currency created and held electronically. And Bitcoins aren't printed like dollars and euros, and they're produced by people. And increasingly, businesses running computers all around the world are using software that solves mathematical problems. Now, I've got this information from the internet, but I've got the expert here in front of me, and we're finding out from Prem what he thinks about Bitcoins. And you were telling a really interesting story just now about if we were on a nice beach and there was a boy selling some ice creams and things, we might have a bit of a problem if we didn't actually have money and all we had was an electronic, a card, a sort of bank card. We wouldn't be able to pay for our ice cream to that boy on the beach, would we?
Yes, Carla. Well, this is not just a real-life story, but there is something taking place in other countries. In the UK, the uptake of Bitcoin is still relatively slow. For the actual spending power of the average household, Bitcoin penetration into the households is very, very poor in the United Kingdom still. It should be better than that. But there are other countries, it's solving masses and masses of problems. So if you went to Vietnam today on holiday, and, I hope some of your listeners are planning to, if you go to Vietnam, practically every major restaurant will accept a range of cryptocurrencies, crypto meaning digital, decentralized currencies that are not controlled by any one banking system or any one nation. And the concept is very simple. Why is it that a government decides what money is or isn't? Government ultimately is a public service institution, not a master of the public. And let's not forget, we are in the home of the democracy, the modern version of democracy. So let's get this clear. Why should we accept something only if the government says it is right or wrong? To put it very simply, if you have eggs through hens in your backyard and your neighbor has tomatoes and the two decide to exchange them, who on earth is the government or any branch of the government to control the exchange between two people of eggs versus tomatoes? Similarly, a digital currency is something that is created electronically. A lot of effort goes into it. It can't be created out of thin air. A mathematical problem needs to be solved, a bit like playing your Candy Crush game. Each time you clear a level, you're rewarded with points. It's that kind of a system. So a mathematical algorithmic problem has to be solved. That requires masses and masses of computer chips or graphic cards. They themselves cost millions of dollars. The electricity that goes into running those graphic cards. The company we deal with spends close to 2 million euros a month in electricity bills in Iceland alone, where the server farms are located. And that's where cryptocurrencies are generated. Right now we generate Bitcoin, Dashcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and we've just added on Monero. These are some of the names of cryptocurrencies. Now, if you go to Vietnam, the average restaurateur is thinking, well, you're either going to pay me dong, which is a local currency, and all I've got left is dong. Why not have Bitcoin instead? They are more than happy to accept Bitcoin. Why? Because Bitcoin has the potential of going up in price. Yes, agreed, it can also go down in price, but so can the dong, or the purchasing power of the dong.
So is there a Mr. Big in charge of the Bitcoin then?
That's the beauty. No,
there isn't. But of course, from a government point of view, I can understand people love being payments in bitcoins because it's very then hard to trace that payment. And we were talking about governments there, and someone, no matter what you think of governments, someone has got to pay for the government. And how can you, without, if you like, as currently done, monitoring transactions, that's how we pay our taxes at the moment. How will you raise taxes if everything went over to bitcoins?
Good point. Since when do taxes actually exist? And how were governments run before that? So why is it that my taxes were taken without my consent in order to go to war, for example?
How they were taken before was you had someone who was appointed as the big tax collector who would go round and sort you out until you handed over the right amount of money that he was required to collect.
Absolutely.
Probably on a very arbitrary basis.
yes, we've heard
it's not
stories.
on a fair basis at all.
Yes, absolutely. There's no doubt that taxation is necessary for the upkeep of an institution that then organizes the nation. No problem there. But where does the idea of taxing absolutely everything and anything you do come from? So what would you do if tomorrow your amount of water you drink was to be taxed? So this is the whole point. You have a peer-to-peer payment system in a digital currency, where this is the story I was telling earlier. Someone selling ice cream on the beach in Thailand, for example, if he's got a smartphone, and many people do already all around the world, you had a smartphone, within a nanosecond you can make a digital transfer of Bitcoin and boop, and you've got ice cream versus Bitcoin. In fact, there's a story of some guy in the United States. As long as 5 years ago, he was selling waffles in the car park through his van. He was selling waffles for Bitcoin. And when he was interviewed on, you can find this on YouTube, I'm sure. And when he was asked, why would you do that? He says, well, look, I can take dollars, or I can take Bitcoin. I can't take anything else because that would require Wi-Fi, a PDQ machine, an actual account with the bank, and I would have to pay 2.5% to 5% depending on whether it's Visa, MasterCard, or whatever the payment provider is. Why would I bother with that? So I either take cash dollars or I take Bitcoin. He's been taking Bitcoin for 5 years. And this is what's happening even right now. There's sandwich sellers on the street, on the roadside in Mumbai, India, which, not necessarily the most hygienic sandwiches, to be honest with you. I've been there. But, there are people even there coming up with business ideas. Okay, if you can pay by digital currency, and if I can have it without the hassle that banks put you through, I would ask you now, what would it take for you to switch bank accounts? If you were to switch a corporate account, I've heard so many nightmare stories of the excessive regulations, people having to fill out 20 forms, and people pulling their hair out saying, I've been banking with you for 20 years and you still need me to prove who I am? And this is the difficulty. The financial crisis created an overbearing compliance culture. Compliance is the most lucrative job you can have right now in banking. The sales side, the actual banker side, isn't lucrative at all. Interests are pretty much at zero. The other financial products aren't really performing, so you can't really convince anybody to invest in those either. So the front end of banking is pretty much dying, and compliance is all there's left. So now you have this question. Well, you've got the solution here through digital payment systems and digital cryptocurrency. Yes, it's got its own set of problems, and we discussed earlier, money laundering is a major concern, and you can do all kinds of dodgy things using a payment system that can't be traced, no doubt. But all those things have already been done in the name of the dollar and the pound, so it's not like the other currencies are angels either.
But I wouldn't know if I was buying a genuine Bitcoin. I wouldn't know where to start. And I'm someone that's quite knowledgeable about finance and things, so, and what worries me is you've got people out there that someone could come up and say, yeah, you can buy some Bitcoins off me, mate. Just give us your bank account number, transfer a lot of money, and you can have some.
And there are so many cons online at the moment, aren't there?
You're absolutely right, but that's exactly the whole point. If you understood or begin to understand Bitcoin, there's no way of faking it. There's plenty of ways of faking a British pound.
But you could have your computer hacked into and your Bitcoin stolen.
Well, that is a separate issue. The Bitcoin itself cannot be hacked.
No, the Bitcoin itself might not be able to be hacked, but you're relying on your computer technology. Your computer is your wallet.
Yeah, there are solutions for that. I don't keep all my Bitcoins online at any one time. I download them into what's called a cold wallet. Looks like a pen drive. And I detach it from the computer, and then I keep it away where I keep my gold and silver.
Buried in
Where's
the garden?
that
Oh, no. Not buried in the garden.
I just want to come in, if I may, because banks don't necessarily have the solution to that either, because they do get problems themselves.
Yeah.
So just a quick point on that. But my other point really was, last month Japan announced that they are legalising Bitcoin as currency.
Yep.
They've announced 260,000 merchants, I believe, who are ready to take it. And that's what's driving the demand right now, real users of
Actual
Bitcoin.
users, yeah.
Using it for purchase goods and services. So they've taken that step already, and I think Russia are also talking about going the same way.
Yep.
Oh, I don't dispute. It's coming. As I say, It's on the horizon of the Bank of England. It's not. All the big national banks are looking at it and looking at the future.
Well, we're covering a lot of ground this afternoon, and a lot of banking issues that are quite new to me. But I know that if I was in a place like Kenya, for instance, I might have a bit of difficulty getting a bank, being able to carry out a bank transaction, because there aren't any, as far as I'm aware. So, Prem, tell me, what are banks not doing, and what are you doing that's a bit different?
Sure. Okay. So it's not just us, really. It's the entire global cryptocurrency community, what we call the cryptographers around the world, that are interested and enthusiastic about digital currency altogether as the next step to banking. It just turns out it's not that banks haven't been able to. It's just not efficient for a bank to open a branch or provide the infrastructure into every corner of the world. So there are millions and millions of people that get left behind for lack of infrastructure. That's as simple as it is. But if the infrastructure is on a mobile phone, and now people have mobile phones. And remember, I don't know if you remember, many years ago, a brand new movie coming out in Hollywood was already viewed in Africa 10 times over, because that's how fast the internet was able to bring information across to the world. So because of that speed at which information can travel, now 1 in 3 Kenyans effectively has a blockchain account. A blockchain account is simply a Bitcoin account with a company called Blockchain. It's a British company, as it happens, with various branches across Europe. And blockchain is the main ledger through which Bitcoin transactions take place. And that's where, if I was to send money to you, Carla, everybody in the world can view how much I sent and when I sent, if we give them the correct coordinates. So it is actually viewable, and because everybody is verifying everybody else's transactions, it's actually a far more secure system than just trusting 2 banks with the payment maker and the recipient's information. When you make any credit card transaction, you actually give your name and all kinds of personal data through the terminal to the other side, which then gets verified before your payment goes through. Bitcoin is a departure from that. If I want to send £1 to you, Carla, right this minute, that's all I need is one little address from you, and within a nanosecond, a pound can go from my mobile phone to your mobile phone, and that's the end of the story. I don't need to know who you are. I don't need your identity verified. I don't need any of that information. So regular payments work on an information pull service. They pull information from you, then they double check it, and then they allow the payment. Bitcoin is on a push basis. I just push money to you, and it's yours as if I pushed it across the table. I think my colleague Bill here would like to add on.
Yes, because as he comes from the traditional background, banking background.
Yeah, I mean, my background is traditional, and I suppose I had no idea about how these things work. I mean, I've come in as a complete novice, perhaps middle of last year, and in that time I've clearly educated myself on what's available out in the markets. I've got to know how they work, and I've been using them pretty much. I've gone down to the bank and withdrawn the money. I've sent money to people I know, and it's worked fantastically well. I mean, I just want to touch on where it's changing lives, though, because the whole concept behind Bitcoin was really to help people who couldn't have a bank, what they call the unbanked. I think the number's around 2 billion globally. And really, we're talking about people in third world countries. If you wanted to send some money from the UK in a small amount to a place like Kenya or perhaps Nigeria, the charges would eat up a good proportion of what you're sending, because $30 or pounds in Nigeria is a vast amount of money, but you might end up paying £20 to get there. And I think that's where the real value and the real vision was coming from with Bitcoin and the other cryptocurrencies. And we're seeing a lot more spent on infrastructure, on developing the application of Bitcoin within the blockchain. So I think, from my point of view, I don't look at it as a short-term plan. I look at it along gold as a long-term plan. I'm not here to make a quick buck. I'm thinking about inheritance and legacy, as well as income perhaps the next 20 years. But fundamentally, when we first looked at the internet, no one understood it. A lot of people made money from it because they were early adopters. And this isn't just about making money, it's about fair play, really. Trying to make things more efficient and future-proof. And I think that's what Bitcoin and things like it can offer.
Prem, you've been going to an awful lot of trouble to try and educate the public. You've educated me this afternoon, there's no doubt about that. But you've been making a lot of videos, haven't you, explaining all the things that you want people to know?
Yes, well, we have a worldwide team we work with, and we promote the business model on a distributor basis. And what we do is, in order to help educate each other as well as anybody interested or looking into the business model, we run YouTube videos and Google Hangouts and various Facebook Lives and so on. So there's many ways of doing it. At the company level, the company also organizes. We've just last month we opened our first ever branch in Nigeria, because we believe cryptocurrency is a great solution for countries where the local currency has issues, where payment transactions are a problem, and where people are already sold on the idea of gold. You don't ever have to mention gold to an African. They already love it. Much of the world's gold comes from there. So we have the right fit, and what we do is, at the company level, we do twice weekly, sometimes 3 times weekly seminars, and we educate people on various different aspects of this. But the crux of it really is that what Bill mentioned is a key word, and that is early adopters. People who are in the Bitcoin business early, and this is still a toddler stage. Bitcoin is still just a toddler. And if it's not Bitcoin, if some other cryptocurrency overtakes it, again, not a problem. But the principle behind it is that digital currency is here to stay, and people need to start opening up to see where this is going and try and have some kind of diversified exposure to both gold and Bitcoin.
So how can people find out about your company name?